Let me set the scene for you. I was 7 and my mother was dating a man with a daughter who was about 15. Her name was Christy. While she didn't live with us, she did stay with us on some weekends. The reason this is important will come into play a little later. I grew up in a moderately isolated area in the south. My mother's house is on about 19 acres, most of it being heavily wooded. For the most part, it was quiet. The type of place most people didn't lock their doors and everyone knows each other. It was quiet until one sequence of events shook my community to its core. There was a man just 2 streets over from mine who murdered his girlfriend's entire family, including her. It was in their home over a dinner about 2 weeks before this event took place. It was also learned later that he had also murdered his mother and father in their home, as they were found after his girlfriend's family was. He hadn't been caught, and the local police were working with police in Tennessee, as there had been reportings of people sighting him there. My mother had gotten a security system installed just to ensure our home was properly secured. We had alarms on every window and door in our house. And this Saturday, my mother got called into work as she was an apartment manager and there was an emergency that she needed to tend to. Her boyfriend had gone to work early that morning. My mother was very nervous about leaving, and due to the nature of the emergency, she thought it would be best that Christy and I stay home where we were safe. Safe, so she thought. She reluctantly left and let us know that her cell phone was always going to be on her if we needed her. Christy and I promptly set the alarm and made sure that all the doors were locked. My mother had been gone about an hour, and we were deep into a Disney movie and pizza. Suddenly, the alarm started blaring. Christy and I jumped up to see what was going on. On the way to the alarm, you have to pass a very large sliding glass door. What we saw there left us frozen. There was a man prying our door open with a crowbar. He saw us, made eye contact, and quickly ran off into the wood behind my mother's house. I will never forget what he looked like or the sinister look he had in his eyes. We called the police and then we called my mother, who had already been alerted by the alarm company. My mother actually arrived before the police did, due to how isolated we really were. When we described the man to the police, and they immediately knew that it was the man that they were looking for. Of course, there was a massive investigation that day of the property and the woods surrounding us. In the woods, they found cigarette butts, lots of canned food, soda bottles, and a makeshift tent made from a tarp. The man had been living behind us the entire time and even had been stealing food from our trash. When he was arrested, which was a few hours after the incident, he had admitted to watching our family to learn our habits, knowing that he could take advantage of the house when no one was there. Even now, as an adult, this even still follows me. Just goes to show that you really never know who is watching you. I used to work as a third-party contractor in the convention area of the Swan and Dolphin Resort/Hotel. Sometimes, we would have to be there at really odd hours for convention setup/teardown. One morning, I was there about 30 minutes before the union laborers, probably around 3:30 a.m. I also would like to point out that I use a couple of dating apps at a time: Grindr, Scruff, and Growler. The apps I use also have that location indicator that tells you how far away they were. All of a sudden, some guy whose profile was blank except for a blurry close-up of his shirt collar and neck started blowing up my phone on 2 different apps at the same time. I basically replied that I was out working, busy, and may be available to possibly chat later. He started sending really creepy messages like, "Oh, I see you working," and other semi-stalkerish messages. I shut down the apps. I have a small office located across from one of the convention halls. I holed up in my office and told the union guys to check in with me there when they arrived. Once they got there, I felt more safe, so I set up my desk out on the convention hall's floor and just continued with my work. Around noon, I launched up the apps again to pass time during my lunch break. As if he had been waiting for this moment, he started chatting me up again from locations like 200 feet away. I told him he seemed a bit creepy and that I wasn't interested. He stopped or so, I thought. A few weeks later, I had a late night teardown around 10 p.m. As soon as I got to my office, he appeared again and started messaging me. His messages didn't seem creepy at first, just simple things like, "Hey, how are you? You busy?" I got really creeped out and blocked him. He would then just create new profiles and continue to message me for months. The messages quickly transitioned after the first time I blocked him. He switched to saying things like, "You can't block me every time. I know where you work, so I can find you again. Why don't you answer me? I deserve an answer." Later, he would just send creepy messages like, "I found you again. It looks like you're working hard. Are you alone right now?" I always believed in that "don't feed the trolls" adage and refused to engage with him, blocking him every time. He would generally only message me when I was working very early or very late, with occasional day messages while I was working in the convention center floor. Convention centers are giant, wide open spaces when no events are going on, which can really add to the creepiness, but what is worse is when there were events happening. I mean, the floor is crowded with people, hundreds if not thousands of people, all of which could be this odd mystery man. I never really felt safe, but I can't describe the heart-sinking feeling I had when in late July he sent me the final messages that said me to report him to hotel security and my own company seeking help. Here is where the unexplained part comes in for me. After putting up with this for a long time, he ended it abruptly by sending me photos of me at my desk in my office from the first day he messaged me. Let me describe my office a bit for you. My office is tiny, maybe 30 to 35 square feet. We have 2 desks set up on the side with computers and an empty table in the corner opposite my desk. The rest of the office is filing cabinets and a printer opposite the empty table. The photos seem to be coming from a part of the office where we have the extra table. It is generally an empty table without any electronics on it that we use for anyone visiting the office or to lay out floor plans. I was absolutely freaked out, to say at least, but I can't imagine how he had gotten the photos. After turning over the photos, all of the messaging abruptly stopped just as suddenly as it had started. I was a 28-year-old Army veteran, and I can honestly say that I wasn't nearly as brave as I thought I would be in a situation like that. In that moment, I turned over into a child afraid of letting my feet hang out of the covers for fear that a monster would grab whatever exposed portion he could get a hold of. The thought that a stranger was stalking me from the app is terrifying, but what scares me even more is the possibility that it could have been somebody who I regularly passed by at work, someone who makes small talk with me and says hi in passing, who then the next minute is sending me anonymous creepy messages. After all, I never did find out who it was, and I guess I will never know.